Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast and we are back 24 hours after what we witnessed at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium against Leicester City. We don't want to divulge in that too much. Yeah, painful scenes. We've got a wonderful journalist joining us tonight, returning journalist from the last 4 or 5 years. Many keep on saying, Rick, how do you keep dragging these people back? Talk about Tottenham, and the answer is I don't blame them out at the moment. I really don't know how. Before we bring in our special guest back alongside me, resident of the transfer window. I'm not sure how much you'll see him after the transfer window, given where Spurs are right now. Jamie Brown's back from the Daily Hotspur. Jay, how are you, bud? Apart from all things Tottenham, which is crazy because we've got to talk about him now, which is even more of a dream.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've been better, Ricky. But obviously, very tricky time at the moment. Another very disappointing result. Yeah, just a horrible time to be a Spurs fan. Obviously, I'm sure everyone watching will be, very grateful for all the shows that you've been doing. So, big up to you, Ricky, for all that. And look, obviously, it's great to be on another show, and we've got obviously another top journalist. So,
absolutely,
as much as obviously we have to talk about Spurs, hopefully we can have some good news, but we'll see. But yeah, obviously another great guest on tonight. So, I was looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I've got to say, all these shows that we do during this period is so insightful, and it's really an opportunity we get to catch up with these amazing people like the wonderful Sammy Mockbell twice a year. Many would argue we probably need to get him on more, but we can't put Sammy through post-match shows, otherwise we will kill him off. And it's tough times right now in the journalist world of covering the transfer window. So we're very blessed and lucky to have back on Last Word on Spurs, chief football writer for the Mail, very well-respected journalist. The brilliant Sammy Mockbell is back on Last Word on Spurs. Sam, you never age. We love having you back here. How are you?
Hello, boys. How you doing? You say never age. It's because I don't go to Tottenham every week, I think, Ricky. That's probably why, isn't it?
Tell me about it. I tell you. As you know, Sam, I think it's fair to say it's testing times at the moment in the fan base. I think many of us are quite disillusioned where we find the club right now, right from the very top in terms of the ownership structure, right from down to the manager, where, as you know, there's a lot of differing opinions as to whether he is the right man to take this club forward. And it sounds mad. I do think there's some out there. I may be surprised that Ange Postecoglou still is the Tottenham manager, with all due respect. And I think, like we've said at the moment, we do know it goes beyond results to some degree. We know Spurs have had a crippling injury crisis. They've got the situation around the fact they've said quite consistently during and before the window, they're backing Ange Postecoglou. And all we've seen for that so far is an alternative goalkeeper come through the door. And we're now day 27, day 28 of the transfer window for our listeners on audio. Doesn't feel like this man is being backed to some degree. So, look, we're going to get onto that and more. So, look, Sam, firstly, how are you? How's the window been for you? Because it's an interesting window to some degree because we've not seen a huge amount of movement, have we, so far? I mean, you'd probably say City have been the busiest so far in terms of the Premier League clubs. Has it surprised you by the lack of activity, or do you think things are going to ramp up as we come into this final week of the window?
Yeah, it's been a weird one, to be honest, because I actually have been quite busy. There's been loads going on sort of in the background, but very little, as you well know, in terms of actual concrete deals and sort of formalised deals. But I think clubs have been busy on the phone trying to get deals in place. I think PSR, as we know now, has become such a factor, particularly in January when clubs are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place in terms of do we kind of keep our finances intact as much as we can and focus on the summer window, which is traditionally an easier one to operate in, or are the conditions of the season so to a point where they are now that they have to go out and do something in January, which isn't the optimal time for clubs to go into the market, because if you're entering the market during January, it's probably because you are, in inverted commas, desperate to strengthen for whatever reason. You may have got a load of injuries like Tottenham have, or you may be in a relegation fight, or you may be going for the title and you feel like you're missing, or top 4 place, or you're missing a certain player. So in those conditions, the selling club sticks their prices up, and it's a tough one to operate in. And I know a lot of Tottenham fans won't want to hear that, and it sounds like it's excuses making, but generally, that's a rule that goes for all clubs. That it's a really difficult window for clubs to successfully kind of operate in.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting insight there into the window itself. I know, like you said there, Sam, there is definitely amongst the Spurs fan base a frustration that more hasn't been done, and we into that final week. I mean, look, Sam, we've been blessed to have you here for the last kind of 4, 5, 6 years on Last Word on Spurs. I mean, I've lost count of the amount of times I've said to you, Sam, we're going into the final week of the window, and it feels there's a lot to do. Maybe this is the nature of the way Spurs operate, that there doesn't appear to be a lot of pre-planning at the moment, both in terms of the window and in terms of the management situation. So look, let's get right into it. I appreciate for many out there, this is going to be more therapy on the back of what's going on right now. So I will say again, we really, really appreciate all the support for the shows. We know it's very tricky right now being a fan. And like I say, let's discuss where we are with regards to the manager's future, and that is of Ange Postecoglou. Look, it does feel, Sam, from the outside looking in, that the pressure is mounting on the Spurs head coach following that latest defeat to Leicester City. Spurs, just to be clear, were playing a Leicester City side who only had one win in their last 14 Premier League games. They only won one away all season, just the once against bottom of the table Southampton. They lost all 7 in a row coming into the game. And quite crazy, this stat here. The defeat to Leicester was the first time since 1912 that Tottenham lost against a side that had a 7-game losing streak. Now, news has come from Monday with reports suggesting that Spurs are going to stick by Ange Postecoglou amid this injury crisis. And there are reports that they're looking to sign at least a player for him, even though it feels actually happened long ago in this final week of the window. And additional sources seem to claim that Ange is likely to be given the opportunity to take that Carabao Cup second leg against Liverpool, unless there is a dramatic downturn in the games against Elfsborg on Thursday, Brentford on Sunday. I'd like to know from you, Sam, how do you see the state of play at the moment when it comes to the future of Ange Postecoglou?
Yeah, I think, or I understand that the pressure is definitely building, and I think that's internally. But I think the reports are suggesting that he's going to have time to turn it around. My understanding are that is an accurate assessment of where they are at the moment. I think it goes without saying, I guess, that the pressure will be building internally, because that the club are on such a difficult run. But I also understand that there is that they look at the situation with regards to the injuries, and there is a sympathy with Ange Postecoglou in terms of him having to put a team together every week, and you've got the sort of the list of injuries just up there. It's a mad amount of injuries, really. First team players, important first team players there, and I think the club want to make a more rounded assessment of Ange Postecoglou's performance as head coach once he's got a lot more of those players available, which I think is generally fair enough. I think he's been dealt a really difficult hand with regards to squad selection, just because he's not been able to have a lot of his key players and his important players available. Particularly, I think the 2 centre halves are probably the biggest blow, and having them out for such a long time has been tough. But equally, I think the players and the squad that he's had at his disposal is good enough to have not been on the run that they are at the moment. And I think that's where I think there is a bit of a fine balance to find. But I think for the time being, the club are determined, I think, really to stick with Ange Postecoglou. I think even if, unless the next couple of results are really embarrassing, I think there is a will to give him that game at Anfield, just to see if you can get to Wembley and get to a cup final and have that opportunity of breaking that trophy duck. Because I would be interested. I would actually be interested to hear your guys' point of view. Is if you guys were to finish 15th this season, but you went and won the Carabao Cup, does that constitute a successful season? Would you then be happy with, or do you think the fan base would be happy with Ange Postecoglou staying on for the going into next season if you won the trophy? Because I think a lot's been made of the you guys not having won a trophy for X amount of time. I don't even know how many years it is, to be honest, but
15 plus.
To bring that level of glory.
Yeah.
And you might not think it's I think, down the pecking order of a lot of the top clubs, the Carabao Cup is right at the bottom. But equally, I think for a club not to have won a trophy for as long as you guys have, to go in there and go to Wembley and win a trophy, I just wonder if that would be enough to keep him or to keep the fan base happy and placated.
I'll let you take that one, Jay.
Yeah, I think the thing is, look, as much as obviously, there are other circumstances as to why we haven't won a trophy in terms of maybe the investment, the type of players we brought in, maybe getting the wrong managers, not committing to projects or whatever. I think as well, there has become a bit of a mentality issue. And I think we've always kind of discussed when we saw, obviously we always use that example at Chelsea where Jose Mourinho won the League Cup as his first trophy. And obviously that kind of started something. Now, I don't expect us to kind of go on the same run as Chelsea. Obviously, they're very different circumstances. But I think from a mentality point of view, and just to kind of get that off our backs, to get that trophy, I think would be huge for Spurs. I think in terms of Ange Postecoglou, whether it would be able to keep him on, I think it would totally depend on kind of where we're at as a team. Are we still seeing a bit of progression? Obviously, as much as maybe fans are frustrated in terms of, the money we have to pay to watch the team, the situation is, we're trying to build a young project and, we're always looking to the future. So that's something that we have to consider. And obviously that's just the way we're going. Obviously signing all these teenagers, that's the part that we're committing to. So if there's, in terms of progression on that front, maybe you would kind of, and we've won that trophy, then that's probably the reason that you'd keep them on. But obviously if results don't, if we continue to go this way, obviously it looks elsewhere. But then it comes back to the same conversation because you look at, I'm sure a manager will discuss in a moment, someone like Iraola. It's crazy to think that what a brilliant manager, but comes to Spurs and you just know how it's going to go. We're having the same conversations in 18 months' time, and that's just such a sad state where the club's at. You would all love to have a manager like that, but we know it's going to end as a disaster. So, Ricky,
it's difficult. I mean, I don't answer your question there, Sam. I honestly, you know what, I've said for like 5-6 years consistently, all I want to do is see this club win a trophy. And I just think I've just been so drained from this season. I mean, I said to you off air that when I look at the table at the moment, I can't but think we're in alphabetical order. I can't compute in my mind that when I look at the table right now, that's not Tottenham sitting there in 15th. That just isn't. I don't think I've computed this season where we are, and yet it is where we are. I just think for a lot of fans out there, they're just really disillusioned right now by the league position. I think that does take a bearing in terms of definitely people's feelings this season. I think if you ask people on like a normal season, if you finish mid-table, you had a bit of an up and down season, would you take a trophy? I think many would. Given the season we've had now, I think, many of us would probably crave out for that day at Wembley. But to be where we've been in the league and to have the inconsistency that we've had, I think this is really hard for people to stomach right now. But you know what? We've had such a difficult season. Many would argue, beyond those first 10 games, what has it been like for many fans out there and how they see it? I think we do need a trophy. We want a trophy. But I think fans would be concerned that even when we've had a full strength side and with, injuries permitted, we've also not won enough games. So that would be a concern. Definitely would be a concern. It's I think really it depends who you speak to, Sam. I think it really depends who you speak to. Some would be definitely 100%. They finished 17th and win a maybe a League Cup. I think, look, if you talk about the Europa League, winning that, the only thing is I look at our squad and I think, God, what would we be like in the Champions League with this squad at the moment? I just don't know. I mean, Jay, your face now, you look terrified. I mean, yeah. So, look, it'd be great to win a trophy. I just feel like at the moment, we've got to try and stabilise this league form. We have got to try and stabilise the league form. But at the same time, we've got these big games coming up. Jay, I'll hand back to you.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, just to kind of look at maybe, obviously, Ange's future again and keeping it on that. Obviously, just reading out some of the form. I mean, it's quite alarming. Obviously, Ricky's given me some of the stats. 7 games without a win. Spurs at the moment, we're averaging 1.04 points per game. just truly shocking. It's the first time since 2007 that we've gone 7 games at home without a win. It's the first time since the same season that we're going to probably finish as the lowest placed team in the top 6, which actually is quite a surprise to me that is the case. But is there a kind of a genuine belief at Spurs that Ange Postecoglou is the man to turn it around, or maybe at the moment are they having to keep him on for other circumstances? Obviously, you mentioned he should get the chance to go in the League Cup, but are there other circumstances? Obviously, we know the costs of sacking a manager. We know that at the moment no one's going to want to come to Tottenham. So, do Spurs believe that he can turn it around?
I think it's a difficult question to answer, Jamie, but I think there is a strong, as things stand, there remains a backing from leading individuals on the board to stick with him. But I think if there wasn't, I think that situation would have resolved itself by now. So I think it's pretty clear that there are leading people within that hierarchy who have so far resisted if they've had any temptation to get rid of Ange, have done, and they continue to back him. Whether there is a genuine belief that he is the man for the long term, I'm not so sure, because the reason I say that is because I think, and clubs are always sort of forward planning, right? You've got to look at who your next centre forward might be, if the one that you've got.
Even this club, Sam, is forward planning. Really? You're kidding me? You're joking? You're joking?
That might be one for a different show. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's a different episode. Definitely a different episode.
You're looking at who your manager will be next, or the one or two down the line. So those I think those sort of those machinations and perhaps those conversations are happening, and I think they would have an idea of who they may look to if worst comes to the worst, and Ange Postecoglou can't turn this around, and they've got to make a decision. Factors as to why they haven't, with why they've stuck with him. I think, Jamie, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Really, I think there's certainly a lack of options, or clear-cut options, because managers rarely want to leave the clubs at the projects that they're at midway through the season. That's a difficult conversation to have, and to walk away from your club midway through a season. You may be chasing Europe or going for the title, but you may be in a relegation fight. Walking away from that in any of those situations is tough for a manager. So I think getting who they would want through the door, I think that is certainly an issue. I don't think necessarily there is obviously a financial situation, because if you do sack a manager, then they will need to be paid, right? Without when they're not working for you. So there is a financial aspect, but I think largely the two main factors are that there is still a certain level of belief that Ange Postecoglou, once he's got all of his players fit, can turn it round. And two, and many would say this is maybe the most pertinent factor, is that the managers that they would look at as potential successors to Ange Postecoglou just probably wouldn't be obtainable midway through a season.
Sam, thanks so much for that. Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying there is kind of reading what a lot of Tottenham fans and minds probably feel right now, is that whether Ange is the right man for the job, I think for many is probably questionable right now. The thing is that we are, coming towards the end of the January transfer window. You'd think some of the managers Tottenham are going to look at, and we'll come on to them very, very shortly, are kind of locked into their jobs. And to be fair, why would they walk away mid-season where you're coming into a football club that sit 15th in the Premier League, that, with all due respect, have got those cup competitions there, don't get me wrong, but it's clear, it's chaos. I mean, that's all I can describe it as. It is chaos. I think for many that were at the Leicester game, that's all you can describe at the moment. It is, I mean, I know Crackers, bless him, calls it organised chaos, but it is genuine chaos at the moment. it's tricky times. I mean, Sam, I hope you won't mind me saying this. You know, we picked up on a story that obviously you ran, I think, around a week ago that suggested that around how players view Ange Postecoglou in terms of the differing depending on who you talk to. There's some that absolutely still swear by Ange in terms of being the right man for the job, being that leader, being that manager. There's others that are so maybe less convinced, and there's certain players that have maybe probably complained about the demands of the training and the schedule. And obviously we know that hasn't really let up in terms of we've seen consistently throughout Ange's tenure these number of injuries that are rising and rising and rising. There is that kind of narrative from some fans out there that there's more to this than just these being freak injuries. Is there something more sinister by why we're having so many hamstring injuries on a reoccurring basis? And when you put on that, again, element to it that these are similar reports that we've heard about players not being happy of the training standards, whether that's under, as you know, Sam, look, you've covered the club for such a long time, Nuno, Conte, Mourinho, Pochettino, you know, I mean, how many squads have we had where they're not happy with the regime of, you know, what's being asked of them? You are a very credible journalist, Sam. We're blessed to have you here, you know, normally twice a year. Again, I know you'll tell us, you know, you wouldn't be writing a story like that unless you had that doubly sourced and you wouldn't have that confirmed. I mean, just based on that and that story itself, do you feel there is splits amongst the camp right now that Ange will have some players that are for him, some that maybe aren't believing he is the right man to turn this around? If that is the case, how hard is that to try and galvanise a dressing room when you are 15th in the Premier League, you are in desperate need of results, and we've got these big cup games coming up? You know, some fans will be thinking, if there is those splits there, why haven't we changed? But we've obviously gone to those points why we can't.
Absolutely. Listen, I think how players feel about their managers, and you know, certain players will feel differently about the manager than the person they're sat next to in the locker room. But that isn't a situation that is exclusive to Tottenham, right? That happens at clubs up and down the country. People hold certain views. You know, there may be personality clashes. There may be issues with perhaps injuries that that certain players may feel like they're not being kind of, and I'm not saying this is the case at Tottenham, but may not feel that they're being correctly treated. May feel whatever the reason may be. So yeah, that, you know, that situation is, as my understanding, is apparent at Tottenham, that that there are some players that are absolutely with Ange Postecoglou and would run through a brick wall for Ange Postecoglou. There may be others that, you know, aren't so convinced, but that doesn't make them any less professional. That doesn't make that doesn't mean that they're not going to give him 100% on a Saturday afternoon or a Thursday night. And yeah, that is a situation, as we know, is a reoccurring up and down the country. In terms of, and you asked a question about the sort of the scheduling and the training methods. I have seen that, obviously, that narrative purported about you know, how, you know, surely Ange Postecoglou's training methods, which I understand are tough. I think they are. It is you know, training isn't easy under Ange Postecoglou. Whether that's having an effect on, or had an impact on the squad in terms of the number of injuries that you guys have accumulated this season, you know, I can't physically sit here and tell you that is the absolute overriding factor of why you've had the injuries. But from what I understand, you know, some of the players have been concerned about the workload, and that isn't just, you know, that isn't just the training. That is, you know, you're playing 3 games in a week, so, you know, there may be issues with rotation there. But how can you rotate if you haven't got the players available? So it's very much a catch. It's very much a catch-22. But you very rarely at clubs have 100% of the people on the same hymn sheet 100% of the time. And I just think at this moment in time at Tottenham Hotspur, we are in a situation, because of the results and because of the injuries and because of a lot of the noise that's going on with transfers, where there are, there may be, or there will be players who are asking certain questions of are we approaching training? Are we approaching matches? Are we approaching our week? In the correct manner or in the best manner for us to go out on the match day and win a football match. But again, I'd like to stress that doesn't at all mean that these players aren't going out on a Saturday afternoon or a Thursday night.
Yeah.
Absolutely 100% committed to their clubs, to the club.
Is it abnormal though, Sam, to see the amount of injuries at one club? What we're going through. I mean, there's been reports that, there's no reports about this. Tottenham are currently advertising, I think, on LinkedIn for 3 separate vacancies for medical positions. And I mean, I think they have had a review of that medical team more than once over the course of the last 12, 18 months. I mean, that in itself kind of tells you that it's just something not right behind the scenes there, whether it's the training, whether it's the medical staff, whatever it is, to not speculate too much. Just that doesn't appear to be right there, clearly, right? When you've got that amount of change and those amount of reviews going on at the moment.
It's weird, it's weird that, for the want of a better expression, to have that many injuries in a season so close together. It's like, it literally seems like every time Ange Postecoglou goes into a press conference now, twice a week, there is a new injury that's happened. We just don't know it. That's happened in training. And it's just a very difficult situation for the club and for the manager and for the squad that is obviously overworked. Certain players are clearly running on fumes at the moment and need a rest, but they can't because you just don't have the capacity to do it and the games to do it and the squad to do it. Whether that is a direct result of the schedule, of the training schedule, I can't sit here and tell you yes, it absolutely is, because I'm not party to that kind of level of info and data. But what I can say is that some of the players are absolutely knackered, and they're telling their respective representatives and sort of the people very close to them that they feel like they're on their last legs. And I can tell you that much is that that there are players who do feel like that they are running on empty.
I think as well, just on that situation, I mean, for me, as much as there is the argument that Ange Postecoglou, maybe his methods are causing some of the issues, I look at the squad depth again. I mean, look, we obviously went into the season with one available left back, and we spoke off air about, Ange probably needs to use some of his squad players better. But we mentioned someone like Will Lancashire, a guy who's played next to no first team football. Sergio Reguilon being another player who might have to be brought back into the fold. And that's just not good enough. Spurs needed better options. And I think that's where maybe we have been left short. Look, these injuries do happen with high intense football. Again, to bring it back to Iriola, but look at the injuries that his football's brought about. The difference being there is that, he's not having to prepare a team once every 3 days. He only has to do it once a week. So, Spurs needed to know that. They needed a better and more suitable squad. Obviously, we've seen Man City get injuries and they have obviously dropped off somewhat, but they've not dropped nearly enough because they've got quality additions. Obviously, we're in a different stratosphere to them. But maybe Liverpool's another example where they have got a squad that can contend with playing 3 times a week and intense football. So, yeah, I think that's another issue. Just to kind of take it a little bit away from Ange Postecoglou, and maybe obviously more towards the hierarchy and obviously Daniel Levy. On the weekend, there was a lot of anger in the stadium. We really saw kind of the loudest it's been against the owners. Obviously, as you can see there on screen, that big banner. It was in the South Stand, 24 years, 16 managers, one trophy. Time for a change. And it would just be interesting to get your take on kind of the situation with the hierarchy and how much of the blame do you think might be on them? Because obviously, as you can see, there's been real frustration, and just kind of your take on the atmosphere on the weekend.
Yeah, listen, I think I get it, and I think that the supporters are absolutely right to voice those concerns, because you pay your money, you pay your ticket, and you've got a voice, really, and they should be able to use that voice. And I saw, didn't one of the banners get confiscated yesterday?
I think that it was the one on screen that got taken away. So
I think that leaves a little bit of a sour taste, because the supporters are the lifeblood of any football club, and they should be able to have a voice. If that voice is negative towards the powers that be, then so be it. I guess the powers that be have to take that on the chin. In terms of the blame game, Jamie, yes, obviously the board have to take a significant level, really, of responsibility for the. I don't want to say the decline of the club, because I don't think that would be fair. Because when we're speaking about Tottenham as a business, and I know you guys just don't want to even look at it or consider the club as a business, but it, in 2025, that's exactly what it is. It's a business. It's a thriving business, and it's
certainly
really
thriving, Sam. It's certainly thriving off the pitch. There's no doubt about that. I mean, on the pitch, it's anything but. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm not defending. And I'll get onto the pitch in a minute. But if you take that side of things, then obviously the board are doing a good job, really. But where the whole thing kind of falls down is their commitment to improving and ensuring that the playing side of the club, which is the life soul of any football club. That's why people come in through the door. You don't come to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium because you've got the best pies or the club shop's amazing. You want to come and watch a team, and you want the team to win, right? And there's been if there's been an area that's let this hierarchy down, it's been their commitment to ensuring that the playing staff are capable of competing at the very highest level of English football. But you've got a club that is geared up to that, but unfortunately, the playing squad simply isn't. And I even think, even with everyone fit, I think they're, if you had your best 11 out, I still think that the sort of the wages that you pay at Tottenham so far beneath what you should be paying to attract the very best players in Europe, that I think until that changes, people talk about transfer fees and paying X amount of money for transfer fees, and you paid 65 million quid for Dominic Solanke in the summer, and that is a big outlay, right, for a transfer fee. But the real money is spent on wages, and that is where you are able to attract the very, very best player. And I think we saw the report from Deloitte last week, didn't we? That suggested that the Tottenham's wage bill is sort of way down in the.
I think it's the lowest. Well, there. Look, obviously wages, and income is the lowest in the Premier League. So pretty shocking. That.
You've obviously got Daniel Levy currently taking the highest director pay.
Oh my goodness! Yes.
In the Premier League. Yeah.
So
and that's obviously what frustrates fans.
Yeah, you can see how bad, that just simply isn't a good look. And So for fans yesterday to take aim at Daniel Levy is entirely understandable, and he does, and the board do deserve their share of the blame. But equally, it is a team effort, and there are a squad of, okay, it's a depleted squad, but there is a squad of footballers there. There is a head coach there. There is a coaching staff there. And, they also have to take their share of responsibility for the difficulties of this season. A lot has been made of the way that Ange Postecoglou sets up his team. You've got to ask questions of that. Are Tottenham too open? You might believe them. You might say that they aren't. Others will say that they are. It's a game of opinions, but ultimately,
I'll get everybody started, Sam.
But ultimately, football clubs, like any sport or any business, it's a team effort. So to pin the blame on just one person, no matter how influential that person is, and obviously Daniel Levy is an immensely influential person at Tottenham, but ultimately it is a team effort, and for the club to be in 15th place at this present moment in time is it's a difficult situation, and it is a situation that every person at Tottenham, from top to bottom, really needs to take responsibility for.
Indeed, they most certainly do. Like you said there, Sam, there's no doubt about it. It is very much a joint effort, despite, I think, many fans feeling that Ange Postecoglou has been left short really since coming into the job when it comes to the transfer window. I mean, look, we touch upon, the managerial situation there. I mean, there are reports that are suggesting that Tottenham believe changing another manager would leave the club in a difficult position as they attempt to build something lasting. Although there is reportedly frustration behind the scenes that outfield players have not been brought in to try to alleviate some of the problems. I think, as we touched upon already, it's very hard to see any out-of-work candidates want to take this role right now. And the club are in a situation where they look to make a change. Do you go back to Ryan Mason for what would be a third time, which sounds crazy to do so? I mean, Jamie there is just shaking his head. He can't believe, a third time back to Ryan Mason, or do they look towards someone like Postecoglou's number 2 in Matty Wells, that is very, I'd say, respected behind the scenes, someone that's kind of worked his way up under Ange, and I think he's very much liked by the players from what we gauge here on Last Word on Spurs. I mean, I bemoan the club for this, so it's stupid I even ask you this question, Sam, because I feel like I'm asking a question that I think I know the answer to, but I'll ask you the question. Does it feel like the club have got any kind of contingency plan if Ange Postecoglou does fail to pick up results quickly? And it's crazy me saying that quickly because we've won 1 in 10 Premier League games against bottom of the table Southampton. I know we've got these cup games to come, but when I'm saying we're going to pick up results quickly, I mean, Premier League wise, we haven't won a Premier League game now for quite a considerable amount of time. I mean, is there any plans behind the scenes, Sam, contingency wise, of what's going to happen if this isn't going to work out?
Yeah, they will have a contingency plan, of course. There will be, they will have absolutely looked at internal candidates if worst comes to the worst and the situation just doesn't look like improving, and they feel like they've got no other option but to part with Ange Postecoglou midway through the season. I think that's a situation I want to avoid, but it may come to a head and they may feel like they've got no option but to make that decision. Internally, absolutely, I think you would look at Ryan Mason, and he's done it. Is it done it twice before, 3 times before?
Twice so far.
Twice before.
Third times, is that a charm? Third time.
First time's a charm. Oh God.
What a club.
Listen, I think Ryan Mason eventually will want to find a full-time position somewhere, but I think he's, there is a sense that he's cut his teeth, as an assistant coach, and I think he will be waiting for an opportunity, the right opportunity, to take a head coach's job in the not too distant future. Whether taking the interim position at Tottenham again would help him do that is, potentially it could, if he gets on a good run, but he will only end up inheriting a squad that is like at the moment, Ange Postecoglou squad that is decimated with injury. Would Ryan Mason do a better job than Ange Postecoglou? Not sure, maybe, I don't know, but it would be tough for someone who is still effectively a rookie head coach to get a tune out of a squad that is so depleted. And then interestingly, there is there is admiration for the way Matt Wells has conducted himself within the backroom team. I think there is plenty of respect for Matt Wells behind the scenes at the club, and just through a few conversations I've had recently, I think perhaps he would be the one they may or would look to fill the void on an interim basis if they were to dispense with Ange Postecoglou. But then that also obviously opens up a question of whether Matty Wells, having worked so closely with Ange Postecoglou, would want to do that job if Ange Postecoglou was to leave. So, I think they're options, and I think the two that we've mentioned there are certainly two prominent ones. Whether they go in that direction remains to be seen. As I say, I think what they would rather do is, by hook or by crook, get to the end of the season without having to make a change. But the circumstances of the season and the results will dictate whether they're able to do that or not.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what a sad conversation to be having, unfortunately. But yeah, obviously, that's just the reality at the moment. Maybe looking at more longer-term replacements, if that was to be the case, and obviously, Ange was to go. Again, it just kind of comes back to that same situation where, is there any manager that's suitable for this job? I mean, I know we spoke a little bit off air about, he's now exhausted every avenue, really, Daniel Levy. He's gone for the winner. He's gone for the, the younger manager. He's gone for the really attacking brand of football. So nothing's really seemed to work. But obviously some of the names we've seen linked, Thomas Frank at Brentford, Marco Silva, of course, another one who's done very well at Fulham, and obviously other Premier League clubs. Andoni Iraola, another name we continue to mention, and Edin Tezarek, obviously Champions League finalist with Dortmund, obviously took them to second in the league. I know the way they came runners up in that season to Bayern on the last day was quite fitting of Spurs. But just in terms of any of those names, what's kind of the stance on those managers at the moment?
I think there's certainly admiration for the Bournemouth manager, Andoni Iraola. I think he's done a fantastic job down there on the South Coast. One of the sort of brightest emerging managerial talents in the Premier League, without a shadow of a doubt. With what he's done with Bournemouth and the way that they play a young, vibrant team that would absolutely fit the bill for Tottenham Hotspur, particularly with the way that they're looking to go in terms of, we can see the signings that they're making under Johan Lang and Scott Munn, and the recruitment staff there. Young players, exciting players. So Ariola's got a vast experience. I say vast. I had experience of doing that at Bournemouth. My understanding is there are, if there was a chance for Tottenham to have that conversation with him, with a view to appointing him as possibly Postecoglou's successor, I think that is a conversation that they would definitely look to have. So he would certainly be a contender, I think. You mentioned Marco Silva there at Fulham. He's got release clause, which I believe is in the region of maybe, I think, £8 million. Whether Tottenham would want to pay that, I don't know, but there has been interest in Marco Silva before, so he's a manager that they know all about. I think he's done a really, really good job at Fulham, bringing them up in the first instance from the Championship.
I mean, just to ask, just a question I've always wondered. Obviously, an £8 million release clause. You know, you paid £8 million for a player. That's nothing. But why are clubs kind of so reluctant to pay a release clause for a manager? Why is?
Yeah, no,
it's always the case.
It's a really good question, and then to be honest, Jamie, I carry those same concerns because in many ways, not in many ways, in every way, really, I think the manager is obviously the most important part of that puzzle on the daily basis. So you know, and I absolutely get what you're saying. If you're willing to spend 65 million on your star striker, why aren't you willing to pay £8 million? Listen, I think if they thought Marco Silva was absolutely the right man, then I don't think there'd be any qualms or issues to.
This is the same club that I've got an alternative goalkeeper so far in this window, but I know what you mean, Sam. You'd like.
But
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I think there might be. I think there also may be people who would disagree with what I'm saying there. Given
no, I mean, look, well, I think if you're talking as a logical person in a normal life, where you're not a Tottenham fan, I completely agree. But anything Tottenham logic just goes out the window. I mean, just quite frank. But you're spot on there. Just on Thomas Frank, I mean, I think he's quite highly admired by Johan Lang.
Yes,
given that
absolutely.
I
think they're the same. They're both Danes. I think there is a friendship. I think there is a friendship there. From what I understand, I think when Lang was at Villa, I think when Villa were going through a little bit of managerial turmoil, I think Johan Lang liked the idea of trying to maybe appoint Thomas Frank at Villa at the time.
Right.
So there is certainly a connection there, and I don't think anyone can deny the how good a job Thomas Frank has done at Brentford on such a limited budget. Even this season, losing their star player in Ivan Toney over the summer, it's not really affected them because that team is so well drilled. They all know their jobs, and they are the epitome of a well-managed football team. Everyone knows their jobs, and I can see why a club like Tottenham would look at someone like Thomas Frank and think, yes, he's exactly the kind of person we need. Whether the fans would think so, I'm not too sure. Maybe you would prefer a sexier name. Maybe you've gone beyond sexy now, and you just want someone who will get a tune out of these players, and just have them drilled and have them organised, which is something Thomas Frank will absolutely do. And then the outside bet for me would be someone like Kieran McKenna at Ipswich, who would in many ways, I guess, be a younger version of an Ange Postecoglou, of the way he plays. But I think there's probably a bit more nuance to the way Kieran McKenna sets up his team at Ipswich. I think they're more maybe adaptable than I guess many Tottenham fans would suggest. Tottenham are under Ange Postecoglou. Yeah. I think Kieran McKenna's representatives and his team and his entourage are relatively close with the hierarchy at Tottenham. Yeah. So I think if there was an interest there, which I'm sure there would be, particularly if Ipswich were to stay up, I think that would be a really, really big achievement. If they could stay up, then I think I can see that. I can see there being an interest in Kieran McKenna. But again, I think he signed a really big new contract at Ipswich last summer. Yeah. And I think he would be expensive to get out.
Is it fair to say, Sam, that whilst many Spurs fans would question why any manager in their right mind would want to come into this basket case right now of a football club, or even in the summer, there will be managers out there with an ego thinking, if I could turn this around, this would be incredible. And it is, as I said, we don't feel like it right now in terms of our league position, but this is a massive football club with such a high potential where it is a sleeping giant. And I know we don't maybe feel like that right now as Jamie looks at me thinking, what are you talking about? How many drinks have you had when I asked you that question? But I'm right in saying, Sam, as you know, again, in the game and speaking to lots of different people, whether it's agents, whether it's respective, players representatives, managers representatives, that there will be managers out there that will look at the Tottenham job as unattractive as we might think it is. There'll be managers still thinking, if I get this job, I still think I could do a job and look at some of these players and think I could get more out of them than maybe what we're seeing. Is that fair?
That's absolutely fair. There will always be, the managers will always feel like that they can be the one to turn that juggernaut around. I can be the manager to turn Tottenham around. I can be the one to to get Daniel Levy to spend a little bit extra on the team. I can be that person. So yeah, if you look at it from that point of view, then maybe Tottenham can attract the kind of caliber that they may or believe that they should be able to attract. But I think the reality is that those kind of managers now have cottoned on to the risk involved in taking the Tottenham job. And while it is still an attractive job, you've had some of the best managers in the world go to Tottenham and not manage to turn it around and failed. And I think a lot of them will look at that and think, do I really want to put my reputation on the line and risk my reputation? For example, if we take Areola, who is my understanding is going to be one of the primary candidates if that job comes up, if they change.
Yep.
Put yourself in his situation, and you're likely, are you going to jump at the chance to take Tottenham Hotspur, or are you just going to hold on and wait for a job to come around where you will have better conditions and a track record, a club that offers a track record of continued investment in players and building the squad? Wouldn't you just hold on if you were him? I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah.
I just,
I mean, that's the difference as well with Bournemouth as well. I mean, look how well. I mean, again, I love Areola. I really like him as a coach. Not necessarily sure whether he's the right man for Spurs, but you look at Bournemouth as a club and the recruitment that they've undergone. Some of the players they brought in. Obviously, Justin Kluivert looks a fantastic player. I mean, it is down to the coach as well. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's done a great job with some of them. Obviously, Kluivert was someone that had really been struggling at Ajax. I think he went somewhere else on loan and had struggled. So, he's done well in coaching them, but they have recruited so well. Kirkes, I think, is a fantastic signing. The two centre-backs, two brilliant additions. So, obviously you look at the conditions that he's working in as well. He's in a club that recruit fantastically well. So that would be another concern. Do Spurs recruit nearly as well as Bournemouth do? I know there's obviously been reports that I can't remember who it was, but I know there was talk that Spurs wanted a similar recruitment policy to the likes of Brighton and Brentford. So so just frustrating. I mean, you just look at the difference in recruitment as well. So yeah,
fair point. Look, we're going to squeeze in a very, very belated break of the show here for our listeners and audio. We've got nearly over 10,000 of you that are watching the show live. Thanks so much as always for incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. We do appreciate it's really tricky times right now, and look, whilst we love having Sammy on, it says a lot about where we are in the transfer window that we've really spoken about the manager situation for about an hour, which, kind of sums up where we are right now as a football club. I mean, I don't know what to say anymore. What I'll do is, before I go on, I'm going to shut up and hand back to Jamie Brown, who's going to take us into what is really trying to happen behind the scenes during this January transfer window, which for our listeners and audio is less than a week of slamming shut. JR, how about you?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously in an hour's time, it will literally be 1 week until it closes. So, yeah, I mean, obviously frustrating what we've done in the window so far. I mean, it's just unbelievable considering, the injuries that we've had. I mean, Romero and Van der Ven have played once since middle of November. Obviously, Ben Davies has been out as well. Anton Kinski's been the only player that's come through the door so far. I don't know, Sammy, in terms of your take on whether you're a little bit surprised in terms of the lack of activity, just given how long we've been crying out for new players for. Is that something that surprised you with Spurs?
I wouldn't say I was surprised or shocked, Jamie. You brought in the goalkeeper. A lot of clubs are still to do any major kind of business. So I think this is going to be one of the windows where there's going to be, pardon the pun, a trotty dash during the last sort of 2 or 3 days of the window. Tottenham will be involved, I'm pretty sure, in trying to get 1, maybe 2 through the door before the window closes. But as I sort of alluded to earlier, January is such a difficult market to operate in, and to try and get the players that you want, that are at the sort of top of your recruitment lists, are very rarely available in January, because they're generally the best players at said club, and no clubs want to let their best players go in January. They're more open to that kind of deal in the summer, when then they can go and recruit themselves. So I'm not surprised that there's been little activity apart from the goalkeeper, but I do expect them to make at least one signing before the window closes. Whether that appeases you guys, I don't know, but I think there is an acknowledgement that the manager needs help, and the squad is currently on its knees. So I think there is an acknowledgement there that we need to commit some of the budget to new players this month.
Just before Jamie asked you about specific players, Sam, I think just on your point there about whether it appeases certain people, or me or Jamie or fans, I think certain fans, or some fans, or maybe majority of fans, are feeling disillusioned right now that, as Jane said, when Romero and Van der Ven dropped to the deck, what was it, December the 8th? Again, that's 3.5 weeks there of maybe pre-planning that you've got to get players in, whether that's centre-backs, whether that's help for Solanke. I mean, the one thing Ange has done really throughout the transfer window, and even beforehand, has said these players need help. Dominic Solanke needs help. And I think that's where, he used the term in his embargo presser on Friday, that we're playing with fire. We've since gone on to lose at home to Leicester. I mean, it's hard because I suppose at the moment with Ange, I mean, you get the feeling that Conte, Mourinho, as you know from these characters, they would push as hard as they could push. You feel for Ange, maybe he can't push as much as he wants to push because of his league position with Tottenham right now and where we are in the form at the moment. But I don't think he could be any more stronger than by saying we are playing with fire, and we quite are. You look at the league table and our results and our form, we are quite literally playing with fire. So you say that you're not surprised, maybe the fact that we haven't done more at this point, but do you have any idea in terms of the direct positions Tottenham maybe will look to do between now and the end of the window?
I think they're certainly looking for a forward. I think there is an acknowledgement that there is, they could probably do with some support for Dominic Solanke, goal scoring support for Dominic Solanke for sure. To go back to Jamie's original question, I am, just to change my maybe answer slightly, I am surprised that they haven't gone for a central defender earlier in the window, because they, as you guys rightly point out, they knew that they were short in that area. So not to have signed a centre back earlier in January, when you've got games to play. This is often the thing with transfer windows. When transfer windows are open during the season, it baffles me to a point where clubs are happy to wait until sort of the dying embers of a transfer window to try and get the best possible deals, when there are points to play for and there are games to win. So what are you prioritizing here? Are you prioritizing the points and the victories, or are you prioritizing the money and getting the best deal for the player? I get it. It is a catch-22 situation. But in this instance, having to play Archie Gray at centre back for a month, and Archie Gray is now, but he's going to be a phenomenal footballer. He's a phenomenal footballer. He's going to be so good, and you can just see it. He's got everything. And he's got the temperament as well. But to stick him into the firing line, to play him out of position for a month in the Premier League, in his first season in the Premier League.
He's not even played his favourite position yet, I think, since he's been at the club. He's not even been a CDM yet. He's still waiting. He's been left back, right back, centre back. I mean, he's been everything but the one he wants to be.
You're leaving. You're almost leaving the lad exposed a little bit, and that's not fair. So just to maybe sort of go back on my original answer to Jamie's question about am I shocked? I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked because I know how these windows work and I know how clubs operate and they want to get the best possible deals. But I am, to a point, surprised that they've left, particularly at centre back, that they've let that situation to fester. And I don't know how many games you've had in January, but it would have been quite a few.
On your
without
point,
reinforcements, it makes no sense to me.
It feels like damage limitation because since the window's been open, you're right. We've had a number of Premier League games that, with all due respect, had replacement brought in earlier. That would have definitely helped the squad, helped the team, and maybe see an upturn in results. And I think what we've done now is that it's very hard to salvage anything from the league apart from trying to finish respectively in the top 10, which looks very hard right now. And I think given we're 9 points, 10 points off the top 10, so you're at a point where now you're really hoping, as you said at the opening part of the show, the cups are going to be the saviour because the league form really now, very hard to save. Very, very hard to save. I'll hand back to Jay.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of obviously looking at some of the names that have been linked, I know today there was kind of strong reports about Tyler Dibling, obviously the 18-year-old winger at Southampton, obviously having a good season there, injured at the moment, I know. It'd be interesting to get kind of your take on where that deal might be at with Spurs and their interest. And the other name was obviously Ange Gomes, who's at Lille. I know he's out of contract. Is that another player that you've heard of Spurs with interest in?
In terms of Tyler Dibling, I've had that name verified by an excellent source. That he is a player that Tottenham are certainly interested in. I can say that with absolute clarity, and he's a player that Tottenham are interested in. But where that situation becomes complicated for Tottenham is that they are not the only suitors for Tyler Dibling. Tyler Dibling is one of the most sought after young footballers in European football, let alone the Premier League and in England. This guy is on the radars of a number of clubs in Europe. In verifying the information about Dibling over the weekend, I also discovered that, and I think this has been reported, but Red Bull Leipzig have got an interest in a solid interest in Tyler Dibling as well. Interestingly, I think I'm led to believe that he would actually consider, and he sees the merits of going abroad and playing his football abroad,
right?
To almost follow in the footsteps of your Jude Bellinghams, Jadon Sancho's, Conor Gallagher's, etc. Right. So a lot more sort of young homegrown talent are going abroad now to get their opportunities to play, and I think he sees value in that. So while Tottenham are interested in Tyler Dibling, I think that is going to be a situation that will play out in the fullness of time, because there will be a number of clubs who will make their offers to him and make their gambits to him, and it will be down to the player and obviously Southampton to decide ultimately where he ends up. And in terms of Gomes, he's a player that I think, again, his entourage, that I think there is a connection there with with those, the powers that be at Tottenham, and it wouldn't surprise me in any sort of instance that he's a player that they would look at. I watched a little bit of Ange Gomes covering England. He made the breakthrough into the squad under Lee Carsley, and he's small. I think he might lack a little bit of the physicality that you may need to be a success in the Premier League. But I guess we said that about someone like Luka Modric, and look at how he turned out. You know what I mean? So, but I think that there is certain means to get that deal done for Angel Gomes. Tottenham will be in a very, very strong position to pull that deal off if he is one that they solidify and go and look at and go and get done. And he's a free transfer, so the outlay in terms of a transfer fee would be nothing, be minimal.
And just before Jack comes back in there, just be clear. I mean, these players, Dibling and obviously Ange Gomes, we're referring to. You see these being Sammy Moore for the summer rather than for January.
Yeah. Gomes won't be. Gomes is on a free transfer, so why would I don't see why he would forego what would probably be a big payday.
The reason why I just say that is just for fans out there that want players for now.
Yeah.
I have to stress that these are players for the future.
Yeah. But I think
where we heard that before.
But I think if there was an opportunity for Tottenham to bring Dibling forward, I think they would certainly look at that this month for sure.
Right.
But I'm not sure Tyler Dibling will want to make his final decision until his first Premier League season is done. I think, as Jamie said, I think he might be injured at the moment as well. So I'm not sure. That is one that would be a top priority to do now. But if Tottenham were able to get that deal done and it meant that they beat that competition, then I think I would not rule out that happening this month.
Interesting. Joe, I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just looking at the striker spot, you mentioned about trying to get in some support for Dominic Solanke. We know Richarlison's the alternative. Obviously, scored against Leicester. But again, he came off injured. I'm pretty sure he came off injured yesterday. I mean, Ange just spoke after the game about how he had a groin issue. So obviously an unreliable option there, which is a real shame. But one of the names linked today was Evan Ferguson at Brighton. There was talk that they don't want to let him go just because obviously Richarlison is back. That was one of the things I mentioned. And obviously it's Dom Solanke's back in a couple of weeks' time as well. Other names linked, there was Matheus Cunha from Wolves. Liam Delap at Ipswich obviously looks a fantastic player, and obviously Ange Gomes' teammate at Lille, Jonathan David, who's also on a free. Are those any players that you heard that Spurs have interest in?
I have heard that they've got an interest in Matheus Cunha at Wolves. Yes, I think that's a long-standing interest that they have. Excuse me, in the player. But he's going to be he'll be very expensive. My sort of conversations I've had over the past 10 days are that Wolves want to keep, Wolves are trying to stay in the Premier League. And so to lose a player of that quality, not only that, then having to try and replace a player of that quality in 5 days or 6 days or whatever it is not going to be easy. And, but he's certainly a player that Tottenham have an interest in and would like and would look to sign it. But that, again, he's one of those players that isn't necessarily a number 9. He's one of those that can flit around, that sort of cross that front line, can play wide, can play 10, can play, could probably play as a striker, although I don't think that's his strongest position. In terms of Liam Delap, I think a lot of the top clubs are interested in Liam Delap because, as you say, Jamie, he looks to be a really fine talent. But I don't. While Ipswich is still fighting relegation, I just can't see there being a scenario where he would want to walk out on helping them stay in the Premier League, and also Ipswich sanctioning that deal.
I'm conscious of time, Sam. We're just over an hour. We're gonna get you out of here in 10 and get you away from Tottenham before it does kill you off. Quite literally, you've got other clubs to cover. I would say you lucky soul. Quite frankly, we're stuck with them. We've got no get out. Just to let you know, we've got no get out. As much as me and Jamie might want to get out, Jamie looks so depressed. I say that. We're stuck in this mess forever. Defender-wise, Sam, I mean, you mentioned they're looking at a forward. I mean, there's been a few links tentatively to defenders during this January transfer window, the likes of Thomas Christensen, there's Ko Itakura. There's been some recent links to the likes of Oliver Postecoglou, if I pronounce that right, and David Hanko also being reportedly linked. I mean, do you feel now with the likes of Van der Ven and Romero, where we understand now back in training, probably unlikely they'll look at the centre-backs now, given that hopefully, barring any knocks in the next week or two, which I know you can never predict with Tottenham at the moment, that they should be fairly well stocked in that area, right? I mean, you probably feel it may be all on the forward now for the next.
I was led to believe earlier today that you're looking at 10 days, maximum 2 weeks to have to get those guys back available.
Right.
That will be a massive boost for you for the club. So having just criticised, I guess, the club for not doing a centre back earlier in the window. In many ways, it would make little sense to do one later in the window because you have got those players coming back. So you may as well commit the money to signing a stellar forward. I think trying to get goals in through the door. So yeah, in terms of defenders, they will be keeping their eye out for sure. Of course, they are. Their recruitment team would be on that. But with Romero and Van der Ven approaching fitness and approaching availability, I think the desire and that priority and their approach to the window would in terms of a defender, that would probably certainly diminish and lessen.
Yeah. Just on Romero, obviously we know his contract runs until 2027. I think there was talk that Spurs did want to renew it. Do we know kind of what's the latest around Romero's future at the moment and maybe signing it?
Yeah, I whether he signs a new contract, I don't know. I think there will be. I think we will probably see links again at the end of the season, heading into next, from clubs on the continent. Probably Spain would be interested in a player like Christian Romero, but then I also think how he returns from his injury will dictate how he enters the summer, basically. Because if he can recapture that form that we all know he's capable of, quickly, then yeah, I can certainly see a number of clubs on the continent looking at Romero and given his contractual situation and thinking, he might be obtainable this summer. I think there's been. I think he'd be up for it. Not wanting to sort of go into too much into it, but I think he would. I think if for the right club, I think Romero would certainly listen to offers from the right club, and that obviously leaves Tottenham in a difficult situation because I guess I don't want to lose him, but without him signing a new deal, it leaves them exposed, doesn't it? So that might be a situation that comes to a head in the summer.
And just the other one we wanted to get, just your opinion on, obviously, Sonny signed that, didn't sign anything. He obviously had the contract extension, the option, which Spurs took up. I mean, what have you made of his drop-off in form this season? Because it's been pretty alarming, just how poor he's been, which is such a shame to see kind of the way he's gone at the moment. Do you think it's a case of maybe he's been overplayed, or is it a case, he is 32 now? I mean, to be fair to him, I mean, you look at the likes of Eden Hazard, Sadio Mane, Raheem Sterling, obviously all players that are, at his age, I've gone to places like Saudi. Obviously, Raheem Sterling's form's dropped off. So, I mean, what do you think? I mean, that's quite alarming for Spurs, isn't it? That they've just extended his contract and he's just been in shocking form this season, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think his form has been one of the disappointments, I guess, of the campaign. He's still a fantastic player on his day, in my view. But age catches up with everyone, right? And I think, you need to be managed as you get older. You need to be managed through situations and through seasons and through games. There are obviously exceptions to that rule. We look at Mo Salah at Liverpool, and how old is he? 32.
Same age, I think. Same age as Son, isn't he?
Yeah,
same age as Son.
Pretty much the same age.
To be slowing down, but there is a lot to be said for playing in a team that is going for the title, and a lot to be that can invigorate a player like you wouldn't believe. Unfortunately for Son, he obviously doesn't have that kind of luxury at the moment, and I guess I think maybe a lot of the fans are pinning the difficulties that the club have had this season on him not being in the sort of the best kind of form, or the form that we've seen in previous seasons. But to take up his option, I think that's a no-brainer for me. I think they were always going to take that up. But what will be interesting to see is in the next couple of years. So when would his contract finish? At the end of next season or the sixth month?
Yeah, they've triggered it for a further 12 months. I mean, there was a vibe around it, Sam, from some of the different outlets out there that maybe Sonny was a bit disappointed that the club didn't sit down with him to negotiate a longer-term deal, and maybe he feels a little bit upset that the club haven't offered him more of a longer-term deal. Could you maybe understand that, or can you understand it?
I can understand that. I can understand that, and I can understand if that's what's happened. I haven't heard that, but if that is what's happened, I can totally, I can see that. I can see that scenario unfolding, because players have advisors, and advisors want to maximise their players' earning power, and for them to take up the option just means a further 12 months on the same deal that he's on at the moment, and they will. I'm sure Sonny and his advisors will want an improvement on those terms. And the other thing to obviously point out about Sonny is, while he's still a fantastic player, in my opinion, I know a lot of players think he's dropped off a bit, he's still incredibly valuable to the team, to the club, off the pitch, financially, and in sort of dominating and sort of making their mark in that Asian market. But interestingly, I was speaking to someone last week who said that they have high hopes for, and please forgive me, I don't know, I can't off the top of my head know the name of the player.
Min-hyuk.
Player you signed from a Korean player you signed recently.
Yeah,
I think they have high hopes, certainly on the field for him, but also commercially for him. So I just wonder if there is maybe almost a passing of the baton happening here eventually, in terms of that dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think just on Sonny, I mean, obviously, I think you made a great point there about Mohamed Salah and obviously having that motivation in the title race. But for Sonny, I think we spoke about it previously on here. I think it was this month. Obviously, he's been here so long. He's given so much to Spurs, and yet he's got so little in return. There's so many times when Spurs could have kicked on whilst he's been there, and they just haven't. And he must get to a point where he's been here for 10 plus years, and he must think, well, what's the point if Tottenham aren't showing that ambition? Then, where's my motivation to really kick on? So I think that's another great point about just where he'd be at in terms of his headspace. So yeah, that's obviously an interesting point. Just to ask, kind of, obviously round it up now. Obviously we're 15th at the moment when we've had the conversation about where we are at the moment. It's been really tough so far, but there is still the positives that we are in the cups. I know there's going to be people screaming at me saying, well, there's no chance we're going to win any of them. But just in terms of your opinion, what do you think would kind of constitute a good season for Ange Postecoglou and Tottenham? What do you think they need to do this year?
Yeah, I think that the league's a write-off, right? I don't think there's going to be any achievements there. So it's all or nothing in terms of the cups. It just has to be. They will want to improve their league form, but it will be tempting for Ange Postecoglou to prioritise those cup games moving forwards, because that situation still offers a possibility and a chance of a successful season. And we touched on it earlier, didn't we? That this trophy drought that the club are on, to win that trophy drought this season, despite the issues that you've inevitably and you've absolutely faced in the league, to win a trophy this season, while it won't completely right the wrongs of the league form, I think it would certainly go a long way to appeasing certain sections of the fan base who are just absolutely dying to not be the brunt of the joke anymore. And I think winning that trophy would certainly help that situation.
Sam, final one. The interrogation is over, but I've got to say, I think it's been more of a good conversation and interrogation. I know many fans, there's over 10,000 that are watching this show. Thanks so much, as always, for the support for Last Word on Spurs. We appreciate it. You kind of alluded to it there. You think the club will try and... I'm laughing when I say this. They'll try and get some business done between now and the end of the window next week. You reckon they'll try and get a couple in, maybe? If you have to gauge,
that's right. And they'll get stick, and listen. I'm sure in many ways they deserve the stick for all the reasons we've explained tonight. But they're trying. They're definitely trying, and they want to. I think they realise that Ange Postecoglou has been dealt a rough hand, and I think they want to help him. And I think that's part of the reason why he's
still here, right? He's still here.
He remains in the job, because they recognise that it's been difficult for him, so they want to help him. So they will. I'm as confident as I can be that they will get at least one attacker through the door. But time will tell, Ricky and Jamie, because as we've said, it's a really difficult market and window to navigate, and there are a lot of clubs looking for attacking players at the moment, and that Arsenal just down the road being one of them, and I'm sure both teams will be looking at the same players, and that poses difficulties for Tottenham, in that you guys won't want to hear this, but if you're a player and you're weighing up between playing at Arsenal and playing at Tottenham, you're probably going to go to Arsenal.
I think we saw it earlier in the winter, didn't we? Kalamawane. I think Spurs are linked with the player, but I think realistically, it's very hard. I think me and Jamie spoke about it. It's very hard to attract the Kalamawane when, with all due respect, there's better footballing options on the table, right? Do you want to come and have a dogfight every week, which is what Spurs are in now, right?
Well, I mean, Juventus aren't in a great position themselves, are they? I think they're right down the table, and I think they're about to sack their manager as well. So even they're in a tough situation, and just says kind of a lot about that. You'd rather go there than obviously still massive, major club Juventus, but I mean they're not exactly flying at the moment, so no worry.
It is testing times. Jay, I want to say a massive thank you, mate. Wonderful Jamie Brown at Daily Hotspur. Jay, thank you. Sammy, thank you, mate. Listen, we don't take it for granted, mate. We've had you. I'm blessed to have you on it for the last 5-6 years. We always have a catch up with you in the January, in the summer. I always feel like when I say to you, Sam, I look forward to catch up with you in more better circumstances. I'm really tired of saying that phrase in the last 5.
One day I'll be on the show, man. We'll just we'll be glowing about the transfer business.
Can't wait to say to you, Sam, are we not going into the last week of the window chase or anything? It'd be lovely if we get stuff done early, but such is nature of Spurs. Sam, look, you're very lucky and blessed. I know people love and obviously watch and see a lot of the content you put out there in terms of on Mail Sport. Where can everybody find the wonderful work you do for not only the Spurs community, the footballing community? Because if we aren't busy, there'll be certainly you being busy for other clubs. Where can they find the wonderful work you do?
Well, all my work is posted on the Daily Mail website, on the sports pages on there, and I link the vast majority, if not all, of my stories and information on my X page, which is my X handle, which is at SammyMockbell81_DM.
Fantastic. Sam, you're a superstar. We'll look forward to catching up with you in the summer when Spurs will be safe and on course for a treble. What am I coming out of on this show anymore? What has this club done to us? We'll be safe and could win a treble. Where are we going with this show? You can tell it's been a couple of days after Leicester, can't you? I feel a lot better now. I want to say massive thank you. The wonderful Jamie Brown at Daily Hotspur, the superb Sammy Mockbell from the Mail. Guys, we have been the last word on Spurs. Please keep safe, keep well, and until next time, as always, come on, you Spurs.